Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast today with Jacob Maggerdan.
Hoppy from the Hoppy 2345 YouTube channel. Go ahead and check it out down below in the description.
Yeah, and of course, I'll have that linked up. We're doing this duo coverage here of the major leagues. Of course, we both love baseball. And if you guys are enjoying the content, stick around, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Again, we've been growing pretty good over the last couple of weeks. My mock draft videos have by far been my best videos on my channel. So I've really been enjoying making that content. And I love baseball. So we're diving into the National League side of things. We covered the American League side in the previous video. If you're here now, obviously you probably come from there. If not, check out the American League video. That should be already up and posted on the channel. And of course, diving into the National League side of things, we're going to talk about the West first. Hoppy, you can go ahead and cover who's fifth for you. I'm feeling the same way about that one.
Well, I got the Colorado Rockies fifth, and I have wrote down on my piece of paper over here, Brenton Doyle is the highlight of this team. He's got a great defense, which can help with the Rockies, but the Rockies are playing in a baseball hitter stadium, and they don't have too many great hitters. McMahon is a good hitter for this roster, but this is a roster that's going to need their pitching staff to carry them, and honestly, their pitching staff's going to need the hitting to carry them as well. So I just don't see them winning too many baseball games this season.
Yeah, and of course, you talk about a bad lineup. This is a bad lineup. Brenton Doyle is a nice piece. He's a good player. I like Ryan McMahon. I like Ezekiel Tovar. And Chris Bryant. Hey, maybe it's a resurgence. He's been killing it in spring. So maybe we finally see the Chris Bryant that they paid all that money. I'm not sure. He's getting older. It's going to be hard for him to turn his career around at this point. You see second baseman Tyler Freeman. That's who they just acquired in a trade, trading over Nolan Jones back to the Cleveland Guardians. Of course, that trade happened a few years ago where Nolan was sent to the Rockies. That's an interesting piece. We'll see what Tyler Freeman can do for this team. Getting a lot more playing time here than he was going to get with the Guardians. I think it's a good little piece. And it's probably good for him as a player so he can actually get some playing time. Hoppy, if you want to talk about this rotation, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, like I said, you just look at the rankings over there. This team has one guy that the this site is projecting to be in the top 100 of all starters. Last time I checked, there's not 100 teams in baseball, so that means this team has no ace, according to that guy, and according to this guy as well. This team has no ace. The bullpen, not really crazy either. Not too many names that I've even heard of, to be honest, and I'm going to be brutally honest there.
Yeah, this is a rough team. This is a very, very bad overall pitching staff. You look at the starters, it's Kyle Freeland. He's not very good anymore. He had potential at one point in time, was a solid little piece. Herman Marquez, who, if you remember, had an awesome season just a few years ago, now ranked out as 305 on Fangraphs. That's really, really bad. I expected to have a rough season. Ryan Feltner, Antonio Senzatella. I don't trust this team at all, to be honest. This is probably one of the worst teams in baseball. We mentioned a bad team in the Chicago White Sox on the American League side. This team will rival them. Then you check out that bullpen. Tyler Kinley's a nice little piece. Not even expected to have a great season. And then Victor Vodnik, a guy that I'll always mention, of course, as a Braves fan. Victor Vodnik was a guy that had a ton of potential when he was with us. We traded him over there. We really haven't seen the potential show up for him. And then you look at the injuries for this team. Tyro Estrada's down. He's a good piece. He's actually a pretty solid player when healthy. Maybe when he comes back, he does something for this team. But I don't expect this team to win more than 60 games next year. It's arguably the worst roster in the MLB. Going on to number four in this division, going to be the San Francisco Giants. Again, we both agree on this team being fourth.
Yeah, and as far as the lineup goes, it's a little bit better than the Rockies lineup. Jung Ho Lee, really good bat. There's not a lot of great bats. I mean, Hilados Ramos and Matt Chapman can definitely do something if they bring their bats to the club. And Patrick Bailey's a decent batter for a catcher, but it's just not enough to drive home runs and win a division without a great pitching staff.
Yeah, and of course, you talk about lineups. The biggest piece they added all season is Willy Adames, coming over from the Milwaukee Brewers. He's a very good shortstop that a lot of teams really wanted. San Francisco was willing to hand out the money to him, but what's it really going to do for your team? Can you win in this division? No, you just can't. You're talking about a division that has the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, and the Padres ahead of you. That's rough. It's really, really hard to beat those teams. And again, I think that they at least tried to do something to get better as a team, so I respect them for that. It is a lineup that if you look at it on the side here, you're talking about WRC plus OPS, advanced metrics. They don't have a lot of guys that are below average hitters, but they don't have a lot of above average hitters. This is kind of just an average lineup. So will they probably win some games? Yes, because they're going to be at least consistent hitting wise. but I just don't expect a ton of wins because of the tough division and because it just is an amazing lineup. Of course, you look at the rotation here, you're talking about a team that has Logan Webb, Justin Verlander, Robbie Ray, Jordan Hicks. Those are four nice names. Those are good baseball players. Of course, Logan Webb headlining that, who has been a pretty good all-star pitcher for a couple of years now, and I expect him to be really good again. And then Jordan Hicks, a guy that really throws some gas. If you've watched him pitch, you know he gets up there in the digits. If he can stay healthy and pitch a full season as a starter, he had a good start last year. It's just not been his role before. So we'll see what he can do. And then you look at the bullpen. It's actually a pretty solid bullpen with Tyler Rogers, Camilo Duvall, and then Ryan Walker headlining it. And I expect the bullpen can give them some wins here and there. And then you look farther down the bullpen, and Hayden Birdsong, a guy that pitched in the starting rotation last year at times, he whooped up on the Braves one game last year, which was very impressive from him. But maybe he's a nice little piece out of that bullpen, a young guy that maybe slots into the starting lineup at some point. But overall, just not the best team. Solid pitching, though.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I like their youth in the starting lineup, and I really do like this bullpen. Verlander, for me, he's a guy that I think, he can still pitch in the MLB, but he's not what he used to be, obviously, and he's not even what he was 2 years ago, much less 8 years ago. So I don't think this bullpen, as good as they are, is going to be enough for this team to get out of that fourth spot.
Yeah, and like you said before, a bullpen can't carry you to a ton of wins. It's just not really possible. Those guys can't pitch every single day. And leading into our number three spot, talking about the San Diego Padres. This is a team that we both agree again are going to be in our third spot. This ends up being a pretty good lineup. You're talking about Luis Arias batting at the top of it, a very, very high batting average guy. Obviously, not as successful when it comes to the OPS side of things. Doesn't really slug very well and doesn't play defense very well. But he's going to hit, and he's going to be a batting title favorite. Then you're talking about Fernando Tatis Jr., a guy that was absolutely electric prior to being exposed for using some PEDs. He's still a phenomenal defender. We've seen the bat fall off just a little bit, but the defense is awesome. I mean, moving him out to right field was a great move. And then you look down the rest of this lineup. You're talking about Jackson Merrill, Manny Machado, Jake Cronenworth, Xander Bogaerts. This is a solid little team.
Yeah, I love the Luis Arias, Merle, Tatis, and Machado. I think Luis Arias will get those three good hitters some RBIs, a lot of extra RBIs. That's his job. It's his job to get on base, and no, he's not great at doing anything else, but he's in the MLB because he's good at doing that job. And then I like this team starting lineup better than the Giants as well. I think this team's just a little bit better than the Giants as far as a starting team goes. The Giants' pen may be a little bit better, but I like Michael Keane a lot. I like Dylan Cease. I like Nick Pivetta. I like Robert Suarez. I like Jason Adams. So this team's pen is still really good too. So in my opinion, this lineup's really Giants 2.0. I don't love their hitters, but they're better than the Giants hitters. Don't love their pitchers, but they're better than the Giants pitchers in my mind. So I think this team takes third.
Yeah, and you're talking about a rotation that includes Michael King and Dylan Cease. Michael King diced up the Braves last year in the playoffs. It was really hard to watch. He was just rolling. It looked easy for him, honestly. That's why I think he's got this ranking sitting at 13th overall on Fangraphs. They really expect him to be great again this year. And then Dylan Cease, you know how good he is. Of course, there are rumors that they're going to look to trade him. That's another reason I'm lower on this team. The potential of them blowing this team up and trading players away at midseason is actually potential. And it could be because of how hard the division is. It could be because of how hard the National League is to compete in. And it's sad because, again, this team could compete if they don't blow it up. I just think that that's probably what happens at midseason. And then you talk about the bullpen, Robert Suarez, Jason Adams, Jeremy Estrada, Yuki Masui. This is a nice bullpen. There's some good pieces in there that can definitely pitch big time innings. Suarez is phenomenal as a player. Had a great season last year, but it just isn't enough to get it done. Now, Musgrove, Tommy John surgery, could miss the entire season. So you're talking about probably not getting him back. But Darvish with elbow inflammation, again, not something to joke around with. That is a very, very serious injury. And it's something that if he has it all year, we might not see Darvish that we expect to get. But if you get Yu Darvish, who is the Yu Darvish that he can be, this rotation gets a little bit better. Maybe we do see them compete for that playoff spot, and maybe they don't blow it up. It's going to be all about health for this team, and can they get back to being a fully healthy squad overall? Going from number three to number two, we both agree again. How could you not agree? This Arizona Diamondbacks team is really, really good. Just probably not as good as that top team.
This is a team, like you said, the Padres could really compete, but this team is just too good for them to really compete in this division in particular. I mean, you got Corbin Carroll, Marte, Gurriel Jr., Josh Naylor, Suarez, who has pop in his bat, Moreno, which I really like, and Perdomo, two young bats in the 7, 8, 9 spot that I think can really hit well this year. Perdomo's a contact bat. Moreno gives you a little bit of pop as well, some contact. And then you look at the pitching, you got Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Brandon Fatt, all of which who I think are really good pitchers. Rodriguez could even come up and do good. And then you see Corbin Burns listed as their fifth guy. Used to be a top end starting pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers, a team that my favorite team has been scared of for a few years. And then once again, a theme with this division, really good bullpens in this division. I mean, no names that really stand out as great guys, but you got a list of some really good mid relievers, ton of mid relievers. Each one of could step in and close different games.
Yeah, and of course, we talk about the lineup again at the top. You mentioned the names at the top of the list. They're great. I mean, Carroll had a down season last year. Expect him to bounce back. Tell Marte is sick. He is easily one of the best second basemen in the sport, if not the best second baseman. Lourdes Gurriel's awesome. They trade for Josh Naylor. Love that move. He's a great piece at first base. Of course, losing Christian Walker does suck, but Josh Naylor's a great replacement when it comes to the bat. You're not getting the defense. Then you look at Eugenio Suarez, like you said, a lot of ability. And I love Perdomo, even at shortstop at the bottom of this list. During that run they made a couple years ago in the playoffs, Perdomo was a big piece of that. And of course, this is another thing we haven't talked a ton about. Look at this bench. Randall Grichuk is a very solid bench piece. This is the first team I've seen some guys that Grichuk could start easily for the Rockies. He could start easily for the San Francisco Giants. So it's a nice piece to have coming off your bench. And then you talked about the rotation. It's sick. Zach Gallen and Corbin Burns. That is two elite pitchers. We're talking about a guy in Zach Gallen who's probably fallen off a little bit from what he was. Not that he can't return to that level. And then Corbin Burns. That's the big addition to this team. They went out and added a guy that is still a top 10 pitcher in the sport. Can be very, very good at times. And of course, they're expecting him due to Fangraphs, ninth best pitcher in the game, 3.3 ERA projection. I just expect him to be very, very good for them. And I love that they're willing to go out and spend the money and get better as a baseball team. To me, that's what always makes it more exciting to watch a team play is when they actually want to win. Talk about some other pieces on this team. Jordan Montgomery just announced today that he is going to have Tommy John surgery. Will miss the entire season. He was looking to slot into that bullpen likely. And then, of course, you look at a guy like Blaze Alexander, who's a nice little young piece that come up and played some last year. Has a strained oblique right now, going to miss some time, but can come up and be a nice piece off the bench. And then, of course, I do like this bullpen. Not as strong as the Padres bullpen, but still has some good pieces in Puck, Thompson, Mantiply. It's still a nice little piece to roll out for the next season coming up. Rolling on from number two to number one, probably the number one team in baseball. It is the best team in baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, it's no surprise. The Dodgers have the best one, two, three in baseball, and if Teoscar Hernandez steps up and really shows up this year like he can, they'll have the best one, two, three, four in baseball. I don't think they have the best top to bottom hitting in baseball, but that doesn't matter when you have the fourth best top to bottom hitting and the by far best pitching. I mean, they have six guys that could not just start, but could be aces on other teams. I mean, they also have Shohei, who's hoping to come back. I don't know if he'll pitch again for sure, but I mean, even without him, they got Clayton Kershaw, who could step back into this lineup. They got Tanner Scott, Blake Trinan, Kirby Yates, all guys that not only are good, they're names. They're not just good pitchers, they are names that people know. And that's just really scary when you have hitters like they have as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting. This team is the example of what you can do in baseball if you have a lot of money. We've seen teams that don't spend the money that the way they do, and it's props to the Dodgers for being willing to do it. They go out and sign Shohei on a $70 million per year deal and then move 68 of it to 10 years after this contract's up. So, I mean, it's 68 a year for 10 years when he's sitting on his couch and if he ends up going back home or if he stays here, he's making 68 M sitting on the couch. So again, the way they did things, it is definitely debatable. It's definitely questionable. It's definitely controversial. But again, they want to win, and they're going to win a lot of games. This team can push for that 116 win record. Of course, Shohei, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez. That is four All-Stars. Mark it down right now. They are making the All-Star game. Those four guys will be there, no doubt. Of course, they have other guys. Max Muncy, at one point in time was a perennial all-star. Will Smith, a top five catcher. Michael
Could
Conforto,
be an all-star. He could be an all-star this year. Will Smith could.
very easily. Will Michael Conforto, great signing in free agency. Love the piece in the outfield. It only makes it better. And then you have Tommy Edman, who was their postseason superstar. He was unbelievable. They signed him up to an extension. Andy Pajes is a nice young piece in the outfield. This team's unbelievable. You look at their bench, they have Chris Taylor on the bench. Chris Taylor's a piece that every team would be happy to have. He is a great utility player that plays everywhere on the field. And then you look at the lineup. I mean, the rotation. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow, Clayton Kershaw, Dustin May, and the list goes on and on and on. They have Shohei. If he wants to pitch, he can. Guess what? They don't need him. They have seven other starters. It's unbelievable. This team is probably the most loaded team in the last 25 years of baseball. And we looked at a Yankees evil empire, as they were called. You're looking at the new one. I mean, this is it. This is a team that is constructed from top to bottom, the best in the sport. The bullpen, the best in the sport. Tanner Scott is arguably the best lefty out of the bullpen. Kirby Yates had one of the best seasons last year overall in total. Blake Trinan is unbelievable. Watch him pitch in the playoffs. He does it every year. Alex Vesia is sick. And then they have pieces that are injured that are unbelievable. Tony Gonsolin 2 years ago was an all-star. That's another pitcher that they added this rotation at some point. Gavin Stone,
Gavin Stone,
yeah,
another name.
exactly. Coming off a shoulder surgery. When he comes back, what can he do for this team? Then you look even farther down the list. Brusdar Graterol is sick. He throws 100. It's really not fair. Michael Kopech is sick. He was unbelievable in the playoffs last year. You're talking about a team that has two teams better than the Colorado Rockies. You could take two teams from this roster and they'd be better than the Rockies starting lineup. You could probably take their injured reserve and they're better than the Colorado Rockies. It's just unfair. It really is. It's truly unfair. I expect this team to obviously be back in the playoff and be dominant and be a World Series favorite yet again. Rolling on to the National League Central. This is a division that the top end of this division, they're going to make the playoffs and push for that. The bottom half is pretty horrible. We're looking at the St. Louis Cardinals first, as me and Hoppy both agree. This is the worst team in this division. Hoppy, go ahead and cover.
Yeah, I think the Reds and the Cubs are the hitting teams in this division, and the Pirates and the Brewers are the pitching teams in this division. I'm just not sure what the Cardinals are in this division. They're not the hitting team and they're not the pitching team. I guess you could say all around. They're the all around dish team. I mean, their pitching's not horrible. I don't mind their bullpen, and they have a few decent starters. I think Sonny Gray is probably the best overall talent on this team. So at least you have that. They also have a pretty good hitting catcher on this squad. But Arenado is supposed to be their superstar, and he's just not a superstar anymore. So that's what happens when your superstar you're paying money isn't a superstar anymore. You're fifth in the division, or at least projected to be fifth.
Yeah, and I expect him to be fifth. I mean, you look at this lineup. Lars Nootbaar is a really nice piece, and he's decently young. Wilson Contreras is still awesome at the age that he's at. He hits really, really well. Brendan Donovan's a decent piece at second. Arenado's still a great fielder, one of the best in the league. He doesn't hit like he once did. And then I do like Ivan Herrera. You talked about him for a second there. Great hitting catcher. He is a very good hitting catcher. I think he has a ton of potential. He's still very young and can prove a lot. And then I don't mind the bottom of this lineup. Jordan Walker, Victor Scott, and Mason Wynn. These are all guys that have a ton of potential. It's just can they achieve the potential? I expect Mason Wynn to watch for that gold glove. This kid's really, really great fielding wise. I just don't expect a ton when it comes to the hitting side of things. And then you talked about the rotation. It's Sonny Gray, it's Eric Fetty, and then it's nothing else. It's pretty bad after that. You talk about Miles Nicholas as a guy that pitches to contact, and he pitches to hard contact. So it's just pretty scary for him. Liberatore was a guy that expected to be pretty good. He just hasn't proven things yet. And then you look at the bullpen. It's carried by Ryan Helsley, who is awesome. Ryan Helsley, in my opinion, the best reliever in the National League. Very, very good. This guy is going to be somewhere else. Wait to the trade deadline. Whoever gets this guy is getting a superstar closer. Very, very good last season. Expected to be really good this year. And then, of course, you talk about Steven Matz being towards the bottom of this bullpen. Used to be a pretty solid starter. Other than that, again, this team just isn't great, and I don't expect much from a bottom feeder in the Central Division. Moving on to the fourth place team, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that their pitching is sick. It's the thing to start talking about and it's easily what I'm going to let you go ahead and cover, Hoppy. Talk about this rotation. It's really, really good.
I mean, I really like Bednar as well. They have him ranked 64. I would have him a lot higher. Paul Skeens, I mean, he's the superstar that's going to put butts in seats for this team. And then they also have Andrew Heaney. I like him a lot. Mitch Keller. They're all MLB level pitchers. I don't think that they're going to, get sent down. But this team's going to need Paul Skeens to win some games. Their hitting, I like better than the Cardinals, I do believe. Their top of their lineup is pretty good. I like Pham, probably higher on him than most. And then Reynolds is an all right bat, but I mean, all around, this team's hitting is not the best. You're definitely taking this team above the Cardinals due to the pitching aspect.
Yeah, and you talk about the lineup, that's where I'll start. Tommy Pham was the offseason addition. They go out and add an outfielder who has hit really well in the playoffs at times, does struggle a little bit with consistency in the regular season. But if they were to make it to a playoff run, I mean, it'd be a nice piece. I just don't expect it. They didn't add enough. Brian Reynolds is a great switch hitting outfielder. Definitely can do things for them. And O'Neal Cruz is set to come onto the scene and be one of the best outfielders that can hit as good as he can. I mean, you're talking about exit velocity. You talk about O'Neal Cruz. This dude crushes baseballs, and I really like him as a player. And then other than that, there's not a lot to talk about. Indy Rodriguez, watch out for him. He's a nice switch hitting young player that will play some catcher for them and some first base. I expect him to do a lot. And Cabrian, obviously, year in and year out, is probably the best fielder at third base with Arenado. And then you talk about the pitching rotation. You already said it. Skeens, Keller, Heaney, solid pieces. Heaney, I'm a little bit lower on than what Fangraphs has him as, but Skeens and Keller I expect to be great. And when they get Jared Jones back, that's the other guy. Jared Jones is unbelievable. He's super young. He's a super talented player. And again, that 1-2-3 punch of Skeens, Jones, and Keller, when they're all healthy and rolling, is really, really good. And I'm like you. I actually think this bullpen isn't the worst thing ever. Bednar is a super solid closer. Had a down year last year. I expect a better year. Holderman's nice. Dennis Santana's a solid little piece. And then maybe when they get Johan Oviedo back, he can come into that bullpen. But again, Tommy John surgery is a hard thing to come back from, although it was in 2023. So maybe you see him show up for this team this year. Going on here from number 4 with the Pirates, we start to disagree a little bit about this division. Hoppy, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about your number 3, which is going to be the Milwaukee Brewers.
Well, I think that this team is a team a lot of people are putting first in this division, and a lot of people are putting them first because this team has good pitchers, but not only do they have good pitchers, they have a good pitching staff there. So you expect these pitchers to show up and do good, even if they aren't good names on paper. But I got the Cubs and the Reds above the Brewers for one reason and one reason only. They're more exciting teams to me, and this is my division that my team is in. I think the high end potential of the Reds and the Cubs, especially on the batting side of the ball, is just way higher than this Brewers team. And I think the Reds have a few good pitchers as well that could possibly play well, and that's really what's hinging. If the Reds and the Cubs pitchers don't show up, the Brewers are going to walk away with this division just because their pitching is going to show up. But I do have them third because I like their hitting not as much.
Yeah, and if we're looking at it again, talking about differences in where we have them ranked, if you want to go ahead and talk about this lineup, looking at it now, just go ahead and mention what you want to mention about them.
Well, I mean, they have a good catcher in Contreras. They got a good MLB level second baseman, Bryce Durang, in my opinion. Jackson Churrio's okay. Yelich is okay. But like I said, I just like the Cubs and the Reds hitting a lot better than this team. I think they have more potential.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and go into my number 3, and this honestly might be surprising to some people. I have the Chicago Cubs at third. I think that this Cubs roster is really, really good. I think that they're set up to be a solid baseball team, but I just don't trust this team as much as I trust the other two teams. And like you said, I think that the Reds are more fun as a baseball team, and the Brewers have been the best team in this division. I don't expect them to change things. I have the Cubs sitting here at 3, and again, I mean, some people are going to say that's crazy. This lineup is solid. Happ, Suzuki, adding Kyle Tucker is an awesome piece. But I'm down on some of these players that people are higher on. I think that Michael Busch is a solid baseball player. I don't expect a lot. I watched Dansby when he was in Atlanta, and to me, Dansby's an amazing defensive player. He's one of the best shortstops in the sport when it comes to the defensive side of things. But he's always struggled to hit. He had 2 really good years in Atlanta. He went to the Cubs, and guess what happened? He went back to being the kind of really good defender that can't hit. I don't trust Nico Horner to be a great hitter. I don't think PCA is going to be there just yet. And now the PCA defense is phenomenal. Wait till you watch that guy play the outfield. It's a Gold Glove favorite in center field. And then Matt Shaw is a really nice young piece that could come up and be good for them. But again, you're just relying on a lot of players that I don't think are amazing baseball players at hitting alone yet. Now, of course, Happ, Suzuki, Tucker, great hitters. Tucker being one of the best in the sport. Then I go down and I look at this rotation. Justin Steele coming off what was an injury-riddled season last year. If he gets hurt again, this rotation falls apart. After Shota Imanaga and Justin Steele, Jamison Tyone is what you're relying on to be your third guy. Now, Fangraph's a little bit higher on him than I am. I don't expect Tyone to be very good. I'm not very high on Tyone, and I don't like the bottom of this rotation. Ben Brown and Matthew Boyd don't really do a lot for me, and I just don't expect this rotation to be amazing. Now, if Steele is healthy all year and Imanaga can be the guy he was last year, again, we're looking at a rotation that can be pretty solid. I just don't expect a ton. Top of their bullpen, Ryan Presley and Porter Hodge, both really, really good players. And of course, you can expect a guy like Colin Rea to maybe give him something and maybe a Ryan Brazier. But again, when I look at this team just doesn't pop off paper to me like it does some people. A lot of people think they're going to win the division. They think that their lineup is that good. I don't expect it to be that awesome. I'm lower on the Cubs, and I think they're probably an 81 and 81 team to me. That's maybe just a middling team. And again, that's going to be a crazy take for some people, but I guess that's my hot take about the NL Central. Of course, I just talked about them being at 3. Hoppy, you've got them sitting at number 2. Talk about the Cubs as well.
Yeah, I really loved what you said about their pitching staff. I had wrote down that outside of Imanaga and the other guy you mentioned, they don't really have a really good pitching staff. I agreed with that perfectly. The reason why I had this team slightly above the Brewers is I do see the vision with the top of their lineup, especially in Happ, Suzuki, and Tucker. I really like that starting of the lineup. And then Swanson's a consistent bat. He's not a great hitter, but he's a veteran, so he knows how to play in the MLB and can definitely be a leader for those younger guys out there. Pete Crow Armstrong, definitely a great fielder. Don't love his bat. So yes, I can agree this team is a little lackluster outside of those top 3, but I just think this is a team that will produce more runs than the Brewers. Even if they don't win more games, I think they will still produce more runs. So I went with the exciting pick. It's more exciting for me to watch a good batting team, and I'm not a real big fan of the Brewers. I'm hoping for them to do bad.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, you're a fan of the Reds in this division. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my number 2. I'm going to talk about the Cincinnati Reds. This, again, is going to be crazy to some people, but we're both higher on them than the Cubs. It's just we're a little different about where we have one team on this list. I like this Reds roster. I think that the batting can be very, very good. We're talking about a guy in TJ Friedl leading them off that can really steal bases. I mean, he's up there with some of the better guys on the bags. Of course, he can be an average guy. Expecting a decent season from him on this website, of course. And then Matt McClain. This is a piece that I know you love. This is your guy. Matt McClain is one of your favorite players. That's why I'm talking about him first, so I can let you really explain him. McClain is a very high average guy that can hit really well. I expect him to play some really good second base defense, probably one of the better players at that position defensively. And then, of course, you have Elly De La Cruz. This is a guy that can win the National League MVP next year. And I know we got Shohei Ohtani. He's an amazing player. Elly's phenomenal. Elly is a different breed of player. He's a guy that if he can stop striking out, he can be unbelievable. He can be a unbelievable talent if he can stop striking out. And then, of course, you talk about a guy like Jamer Candelario, who didn't have a great year last year. I expect a bounce back. I saw what this guy can do. I expect better of him. And then, honestly, I like Gavin Lux. I think that's a solid addition. This is a guy that he needed a change of scenery. LA wasn't doing it for him. Let him come over to the Reds where they've got an opening at some different positions and can have him at different spots in the field. Maybe a utility guy that they use at different spots at different times. And then, of course, you're talking about a catching group that includes, Jose Trevino, who as they have listed as starter here, but Stevenson, when he arrives, can be one of the better hitting catchers in the sport. I just like this lineup a lot. Like you said, they're very exciting. They can be fun to watch, and I expect a lot from them. Moving on to the rotation for me. The reason that I think this team can be good again, they went out and added Brady Singer. Now, some people aren't as high on Brady Singer. I think that's awesome. Brady Singer is an amazing second piece in this rotation. I love going out and getting him. You traded India away, who just didn't have a spot on the roster due to players coming back, as in specifically McClain. But Hunter Green's sick. I mean, Hunter Green had one of his best seasons of his career, the best season last year. And I like Nick Lodolo. I think he's a really good third piece. And then, of course, Nick Martinez at times was really good for the Reds last year. Then you look at this bullpen. That's where people are going to get at us. That's where people are going to say, you're overrating them because the bullpen isn't good. It just isn't. It's a really scary thing to look at that bullpen and say, we got to rely on them a lot. but I like pieces in it. I think there's guys that can be really good. Taylor Rogers, that's a good signing. He has potential. Scott Barlow is a solid piece in the bullpen. Graham Ashcraft moving into that bullpen can be really good. So maybe I'm expecting too much from some of these arms, but I just like what they have everywhere else. And maybe the bullpen won't be great, but maybe the rest of the team can carry them on. That's what I expect out of the Reds. And of course, like I mentioned before, we get some of these pieces back later down the line, like a Tyler Stephenson, like a Spencer Steer. Those guys will really help a lineup that already looks pretty solid. And then again, last but not least, Alexis Diaz can come back at some point. That can save the bullpen. Is Alexis Diaz going to be the guy he was 2 years ago, or is he going to be the guy we got last year? Because Alexis Diaz last year wasn't very good. It was concerning the drop off, but I think maybe there were some injury concerns or something going on there. Maybe he comes back and provides for this team. And then, of course, you look at a guy like Rhett Lauder, my last talking point. This guy was drafted first in the first round, I should say, seventh overall in 2023. He was sick in college. Rhett Lauder has a ton of potential. He was on that same playing field as Skeens in college, not as good, but really good. Maybe Rhett Lauder comes up and makes this rotation even better. That's all I'm gonna do talking about the Reds. I know you're gonna say a lot about them a little bit later, and I'm gonna go ahead and carry on into the first place team in this division in the Milwaukee Brewers. You already talked about them. There's not a lot I have to say. Jackson Chourio is sick. This guy's going to be a very, very good baseball player. 21 years old. Expect a ton out of him as a player. Christian Yelich, when healthy, is awesome. Christian Yelich is a top hitter in the sport. People are not so high on him due to what he's done due to injuries. They're letting him DH now. He's not playing the field. He's going to come out here. He's going to DH. He's going to stay healthy. He's going to bat. I just expect a lot out of him. And then, of course, William Contreras, in my opinion, is the best catcher in baseball. I think he is the best catcher. He brings you an unbelievable bat. He is a perennial all-star. He's going to be that for the next few years. And once he got to the Brewers, they taught this man how to catch. He is an unbelievable catcher behind the dish now. Never did that in Atlanta. He always batted very well, didn't have the catching ability. I just expect a lot more out of this lineup than some people expect. I think Bryce Turang is great. I love Joey Ortiz's defense. Sal Frelick is an unbelievable defender in the outfield, and I like Garrett Mitchell as well. I don't know why. I just expect more out of this lineup than some people do. You mentioned the rotation. This is the piece of this team that can get things done. You're talking about Freddie Peralta, Nestor Cortez, who used to be really, really great, Aaron Savali, and then Jose Quintana, who's a solid piece as well. I expect those four guys to be solid pitchers, and then you know that this bullpen is going to be sick. Every single year, the Milwaukee Brewers find some random guy and turn him into the next Devin Williams. They do it every year. I mean, right now you have Trevor McGill, who's sick. You have Joel Payamps, who's awesome. And then if you remember Uribe last year when he come up, he had some crazy starts or appearances out of the bullpen. And there's just something about this team. I don't know. I think that they're going to succeed. And when Brandon Woodruff comes back, look at that top three and add a fourth guy in there with Quintana at the five. Brandon Woodruff is sick. I can't wait till he comes back. That's why I have the Brewers winning this division. Hoppy, I'll go ahead and let you rant about your boys down there in Cincinnati.
You look at this Reds team here, and I picked them to finish first this year. And this is a team that positionally in the lineup has been ready to finish first the last two seasons. Our pitching has just let us down. We have insane depth with this lineup. We got Stuart Fairchild. He played last year a lot of games. He wasn't just a bench piece. He started many games for us. We got Austin Hayes. And I think you're looking at a team that top to bottom's the best hitting team, even without Spencer Steer and Stevenson stepping in this division. They have some really good hitters on this team. You always hear about Ellie De La Cruz, but Steer, McLean, Friedel, Fraley are all guys that could potentially have more RBIs for this team than Ellie De La Cruz this year. We have a lot of bats. Strand's a guy that could step up as well. And then you look at the pitchers. Hunter Green and Lodolo have a lot of talent. Abbott is a guy that I like a lot. You mentioned Rhett Lauder. So last year, our starting pitchers were really bad, but they could come back and be better this year. The bullpen, like you said, not great, but I like Graham Ashcraft. I think Abbott could give us some bullpen play as well, even though he's listed as a starter. I think he could go in, and if he doesn't end up giving us bullpen play, I think Martinez or Spears will instead, and he'll take their starting job. So I really do think this team can finally put it together and let these young bats show what they can do because they've been doing it 2 years already.
Yeah, and last talking point for me, this team is primed to win. If they don't win, the fans are going to be upset because this is just a fun team. It is. And coming from a Braves fan, the Braves and the Reds used to hate each other. I don't hate this Reds team. I don't. I kind of like some of these players, and maybe it's because you're a fan and I'm around you all the time, and I've went to games there, and it's just a fun team. So yeah, I'm maybe expecting a little bit much, and maybe we both are, but I don't know. It's a fun team.
Baseball's better when Cincinnati's good. That's all I'll say.
Rolling from the National League Central into the National League East, of course, the division where my favorite team resides. Talking about the bottom feeder of the division in the Miami Marlins. Hoppy, get us started here.
Yeah, in my projections, I have the White Sox as the worst team. You mentioned the Rockies, giving them some competition. This is the team I think is the most competition to them. They are not very good as far as a lineup goes. Looking at their lineup here, there's no standout. There's no standout name to me. Looking at the bench,
It's
I
not
think
there.
Sandian Alcantara is a good name for this team, and outside of that, they really have no good names anywhere. Alcantara is probably going to be the only pitcher to win 10 plus games on this roster, and I mean, it's going to be hard to win many games when your best pitcher wins 10 games, and there's no one else that does that. So.
Yeah, this team is the definition of disgusting on paper. It is a team that I hate for the Miami Marlins that they have to go out there and watch this team play baseball. It's unfortunate that their owner doesn't spend money on this team because they do have a pitching staff that has some pieces in there and some potential. You look at the lineup. Xavier Edwards is a nice young piece. Xavier Edwards can maybe bring them something that the rest of the team isn't going to bring them. I don't expect much from the rest of that lineup. This is a team that a casual baseball fan is going to look at this lineup and say, I know nobody. There's not a name on that team that a casual baseball fan will know. There's zero players. There's not a single guy on this team that has over 3 years of MLB service time in the starting lineup. Zero. They have everybody on the entire starting lineup has under 3 years of service time in the majors. It's really, really bad. And this team definitely can push for the Chicago spot. This team might be the worst if they don't have a guy named Sandy Alcantara. He's unbelievable. I mean, he is a Cy Young candidate. He is a phenomenal player. He is a guy that, when healthy, is unbelievable. I think Max Meyer has some potential. Other than that, yeah, this team is ugly. It really is. It's not a fun team to look at. The bullpen is not very good. Anthony Bender is a nice piece in the bullpen. He might get moved. You do look at the bench. Two of the better bats on this team are on the bench right now, in Jesus Sanchez and Connor Norby. Maybe those guys come back and become the stars of this team. Jesus Sanchez does have a really good power bat. And then you look at the pitching. This is where I think this team can maybe win more games than Chicago. They have Edward Cabrera, who is very, very good, and he has unbelievable stuff. Just can't figure out in the majors. They have Braxton Garrett, who's a very nice lefty, Yuri Perez, who's a very solid player. If these guys can come back, be healthy, and pitch for this team, maybe there's some success to come from that. But otherwise, like you said, Hoppy, this is a very bad baseball team. This is just not a very good team. And I'm glad that I have 20 games in this division to play them. It's going to be nice for maybe padding some wins on the Braves stats. Moving on to the number 4 team in this division. I know we both agree again here, and it's a complete changeup because this team actually has some fun pieces. Hoppy, if you want to talk about the Nationals.
Yeah, I agree with you. This Nationals team is young and they're going to be fun to watch. People are going to want to watch them. If they're fans of this team, they're going to say, oh, whereas a Marlins fan might say, we'll wait a few years before we go check a game. This is a team that the fans are going to at least want to come watch. Dylan Cruz is a young guy that they're hopeful in. James Wood is the young guy they're hopeful in. Josh Bell, he used to be an incredible DH. Now, I don't know if I'd say quite
Yeah.
incredible, but he's still a good hitter. This team's definitely, like you said, more exciting than the team we just looked at a few seconds ago in the Miami Marlins. But I still think they're a lock for 4 in this division. And the reason I say a lock is because they're definitely better than the Marlins, but they're definitely not going to be able to compete with a healthy Mets, Braves, or Phillies. Three teams that I really think are going to be fighting each other for that top spot.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about the lineup real quick. Like you said, you mentioned the names Cruz, Wood, Bell, all really nice players. Bell obviously getting older now, but still is a good piece, and he's a good switch hitting guy that can hit in that ballpark. C.J. Abrams had an awesome year last year up until a point where he got in trouble with the team, was sent back down to AAA for a little while. He comes back up again. I think he can be really, really good. Honestly, I trust CJ Abrams to be a top 10 shortstop next year. I think that this guy is really solid. And then I like some of the pieces down the lineup. I mean, Nathaniel Lowe was a part of that Texas Rangers team. He's a solid piece. Paul DeYoung can hit a little bit. I don't hate this team. I mean, Keibert Ruiz is also a nice little piece. And then you look at the rotation. This is actually a decent rotation. Mackenzie Gore has a ton of potential, a guy they got back in the Juan Soto trade. Trevor Williams is an okay piece. Jake Irvin is a solid piece. And I don't hate Michael Soroka. You know me, as a Braves fan, I love Soroka when he was healthy. He showed some things last year as a bullpen arm. They're going to move him back into that starting rotation, try to let him pitch full games again. We'll see what he can do. If he ever bounces back to what he was, I mean, this guy was a top 20 pitcher at one point. The Achilles injuries, of course, tore his career apart. And then you look at this bullpen, Kyle Finnegan, Jorge Lopez, two really awesome arms at the top of the bullpen. Then it falls off. It's pretty rough. That's why this team can't win a lot of games. It's not a great lineup after the top five guys, and then the bullpen's pretty bad. But I do trust Finnegan and Lopez to be solid pieces. Hoppy, if there's anything else you want to say about this pitching staff.
I like Jake Irvin a lot. I mean, I've really been watching him close ever since he entered the MLB. I think he'll have a really good year this year for this squad. But like you said, outside the top end on that bullpen, it's just not good enough to close out games for a team that's going to need to close out the ones that they're already ahead in to really secure wins this year.
Moving on from number four in this division, we get into the teams that can potentially make the playoffs in the New York Mets. The third place team for the both of us here. I'm going to talk real quickly about this Mets starting lineup. You talk about a team that can hit. The top three guys in this lineup are very, very good hitters. This is three of the better hitters at their positions in the sport. Francisco Lindor is sick, had an amazing season last year, arguably the best shortstop in the sport behind Witt and Henderson. In right field, they just added what is the biggest piece in the free agency period in Juan Soto, an unbelievable guy that is a perennial MVP candidate. This brings a ton to the top of this lineup. And then the third guy on this list, Pete Alonso, very happy to have him back. They almost looked like they weren't going to get him, but nobody was willing to pay him. So he got a 2-year deal, come back to the Mets, kind of prove it again, see what he can do. And then after that, you've got Brandon Nimmo, a guy that if he bounces back a little bit, had a rough year last year, can be solid. And then Mark Vientos, who had an awesome playoff run, was unbelievable in the playoffs. Really, really solid player. And then I don't mind Jesse Winker. I think he's a solid DH. After that, of course, the bottom of this lineup is pretty rough. The only reason that I have them really dropping to 3 in the division due to the bottom half of the lineup just not being so great. Hoppy, what do you think about the lineup?
Oh, I absolutely love this Mets team, and I just want to start this. And this is no diss to the Mets having them at 3 here. It was very hard to put them at 3, and I almost wrote them down at the number 1 spot. But they just lacked the depth for me to put them above the Phillies or the Braves. That those teams are just so deep. But you talk about Juan Soto. You said in the AL video that Judge is the best hitter in baseball. I think Juan Soto is the best batter in baseball, even if he isn't the best hitter. This man's approach as a Joey Votto fan for years and years, I just adore Juan Soto's approach. He's a guy who in a down year is still going to be a top 10 hitter just because he's going to take those walks and he's still going to have a decent amount of pop in a down year. So I really do like this team, even though I'm putting them 3.
Yeah, and again, quick shout out to this bench real quick. Luis Angel Acuna, of course, is Ronald Acuna's brother. Hate that he's on the Mets. Wish he would end up on the Braves someday. It'd be kind of nice addition. Then you get into the reason why this team is third. It's the starting rotation. This is a very scary starting rotation for the New York Mets. This team, to me, is going to struggle due to the rotation. Clay Holmes has been awesome in spring training. He's never been a starter. Clay Holmes has been a bullpen guy, and you're expecting him to be able to lengthen it out and become a starter. And I know, again, the spring training is awesome. Like some managers say, spring training means nothing. Those guys are not pitching in high leverage situations at all. When you get into the regular season, you're going to face your first real competition and what's going to be a difficult situation. I just don't love that he's their ace. I do think he can maybe move to that rotation and become a guy. I just don't love him being the ace. Tyler McGill is a nice piece. I think he's a solid starter, but again, being your number 2 is kind of rough. Kodai Senga being the 3, in my opinion, down the board a little bit. Coming off that injury, when healthy, Kodai Senga has been pretty great, but injury has been a real point of his career so far. And then to me, David Peterson would be the 4, Griffin Canning being the 5. Canning is a guy the Braves cut. So again, I just think that if he's in your 5-guy rotation, it just scares me a lot. I really, really don't like the rotation for the Mets. Then you look at the bullpen. Edwin Diaz and AJ Minter is sick. That is probably one of the better lefty relievers. Obviously, me as a Braves fan, I love Minter for a long time. And then Edwin Diaz, when healthy, is awesome. Of course, facing that torn ACL, celebrating in the WBC 2 years ago was really unfortunate for him. And then, of course, they have some names to watch out for. Jose Butto, Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, Paul Blackburn even was originally a starter moving to the bullpen. They could have a pretty good bullpen, so expect them to win games with the bullpen because the starting rotation is pretty rough.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be pretty much echoing what you said there. I love the bullpen. I think Jose Butto, Reed Garrett are some guys that people are gonna know by the end of the year. Jose Butto, I already do know that name pretty well. I think a lot of baseball fans do. Mets fans are gonna be hoping Kodai Senga can bounce back this year and have a really good year. Uh, Good team, good bullpen, good hitting, just not enough to get them over that hump and compete with these really, really good top end teams in this division.
Yeah, and a last talking point quickly for this team is, of course, the injured reserve. This is a situation that has really changed this team. Coming into the regular season, I think if they had all their pieces, maybe you could argue them as a really, really high up in the division, potentially winning it. Francisco Alvarez is going to miss about 8 weeks due to the hand surgery that he's had. And then Jeff McNeil, coming off what was the worst year of his career, he's been really going downhill, now only getting older and facing a strained oblique, which will hold him back for probably a month or so. And then you look at their pitching staff. Sean Manaea, when he can come back, he can be a solid piece. But again, the oblique is really scary. That's an injury that holds you out for quite some time. And then Frankie Montas, a guy that has pitched really good in the last couple of years, can be a great pitcher. It's just a strain to the lat. Again, a really important part of the pitching motion, probably going to hold him out for quite some time. If those guys come back, maybe it changes this team, but I think it'll just be too little too late when they arrive, and maybe that rotation probably hurts them going down the stretch. Leading into our second place team, me and Hoppy again are both going to agree here. It's going to be the Philadelphia Phillies. Hoppy, talk about them.
Well, this Phillies team has some great bats. They got Bryce Harper. He's a career long great batter, MVP at one point in his career. Schwarber is a great unconventional leadoff hitter for this team and has been for the past, I think, 2 years since they slotted him into the leadoff spot. Trey Turner is a guy that I really don't love. I think he's an up and down, hot and cold player, but he brings you the defense every game and he brings you the speed every game, whether his bat's hot or not. Bohm is a good hitter. JT Realmuto is a good hitter. Top to bottom, I really like this hitting staff. And if I can get a look at the bullpen real quick, I want to shout out this bullpen on this team real quick as well. You got Jordan Romero, you got Orion Kirkheron, Matt Strom, Jose Alvarado, and Tanner Banks. I wanted to mention Tanner Banks. He's a guy who's coming off a year where he pitched the most strikeouts, the most innings, and he had a 1.3 whip. That's a name that's way down this bullpen, I think, can step up. This was a team that was really hard for me to put at number two. That just speaks to the talent of the Braves. But the rotation's also very good here in Philly. Older team, look for them to make a move if they want to pass up the Braves, but they're very close.
Yeah, and again, it's hard for me to talk about the Phillies. Not a big fan of this team, but of course, I'm going to talk about them. The lineup is really, really good. Of course, 1 through 3 is guys that are probably going to be all stars. I am also not as high on Trey Turner anymore. He is hot and cold, phenomenal after getting booed by the Boo Birds last year. Had an awesome back half of the season. But again, he's only getting older, and speed is his biggest quality. You lose speed with age. I think that that's going to end up hurting him. He's also a pretty bad defender at shortstop. He used to be kind of solid there. He makes a lot of bad decisions there in that position. Think that can hurt their defense. Overall, defensively, this team isn't all that great. Alec Bohm is not an awesome third baseman by any means on defense. And Harper actually being a pretty good first baseman defensively is surprising because moving from right field to there is definitely a big move. But again, overall, defense is kind of scary for this team at times. And I really don't expect a lot from the bottom half of this lineup. To me, Castellanos has passed over the best part of his career. Bryson Stott really struggles in the playoffs. I mean, he had the awesome moment that everybody remembers, that big time home run. But if you go actually look at the stats, it's one of his very few hits in the playoffs. And then, of course, Brandon Marsh, was like 1 for 22 last year in the playoffs. Again, this bottom half of the lineup to me just isn't very good anymore, and they're all getting older. You're right, this team has to make a move for me to pump them over the top. If they make some ginormous move and add a big time bat to the team, they definitely can push to win the division. And then you talk about the rotation. This rotation is filthy at the 1 and the 2. Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola have both thrown the most innings in the entire past 5 years of baseball. They combine throw every single game. When they're needed to pitch, they pitch. Zach Wheeler is arguably the best pitcher in the sport. Aaron Nola is really, really good. After that, you're talking about guys that have to continue the success that they previously had. Christopher Sanchez was really sick last year, had a great season. Jesus Luzardo, a guy that was really good at one point for the Marlins, he's kind of fell off a little bit. It's not a great lefty to have in there, but again, he's got potential. And then Taijuan Walker, who's pretty awful. That's the back end of it, but they'll have Suarez coming back at some point to fill in. This is the best part of this team. The bullpen, it's loaded. I mean, it really is. Jordan Romano, Orion Kerkering, Jose Alvarado, Matt Strom, like you mentioned, Tanner Banks. It's a really, really good bullpen. If you're going to watch this team succeed, it's going to be those top two guys getting them late in games, the bullpen coming in and closing it out. I just think the bottom half of the lineup holds them back. If they make a big time trade, maybe that's what makes this team even better than the Braves, who we're going to move on and talk about at number one in this division, the Atlanta Braves, the team that has been the king of this division. 6 straight wins before last year. Obviously, the injuries really ruined our season. Still ended up making the playoffs, but didn't do what we wanted to do. Hoppy, talk about this team.
Oh man, you look at this team and they are littered with hitters. They're littered with good players. You got Jerickson Profar. That's a new bat that they've added. He's a switch hitter. I like him leading off the game for them, unless Ronald Acuna comes back into the leadoff spot, of course. Then you got Austin Riley. I'm going to go ahead and call him the most consistently underrated baseball player I have ever seen. This guy is not just a guy who gets hot. He's a guy who shows up year after year and year after year. People forget about him. He's one of the best third basemen in baseball. Matt Olson, over 30 home runs every one of the last 4 years. 900 OPS 2 years ago, almost reaching 1,000. I believe over 800 last year as well. They got one of the best DHs in baseball. Michael Harris is looking to have a bounce back year. And by the way, his down year was still above a 700 OPS. This guy is great. I think this is questionably with the Rangers and the Phillies the best top to bottom rotation in baseball, especially with Ronald Acuna Jr. returning.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the lineup real quick because, of course, it's my favorite team. I love them. This team is awesome for me. I really enjoy watching them. Facing the injuries last year really sucked. We lost Acuna for the whole season. We lost Austin Riley. We lost Ozzie Albies for most of the season. We lost Sean Murphy for a lot of the year. We still won 89 games. This is a team that really competes at a high level. They're a winning brand. They're a winning team. Now, again, it sounds like I'm hyping up my team, but they've just been successful. They won the championship back in 21. I think they have a great chance to repeat and do it again this year. Of course, coming back with some of their guys. You mentioned Jerickson Profar. That's an addition that I loved. We sat there and we didn't do a lot at the beginning of free agency, and it kind of started to scare me. I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to add anybody? Then we go out and add a guy that just come off his best season of his entire career. He's a switch hitter that's going to play decent defense in the outfield and really give you a great bat. He also doesn't strike out much at all. Austin Riley, you're 100% right. It's like people don't know who he is. I think he's the second best third baseman in the sport behind J. Ram, who undoubtedly is the best. Austin Riley's defense, go look up his stats the last couple years. He's improved a ton as a defender. He's probably one of the better defensive third basemen now in the game. Matt Olson, expecting a huge bounce back year from him. He just hit 50 home runs a couple years ago and broke the Braves record. Marcell Ozuna is coming off the best year of his entire career. I expect him to be amazing again this year. Michael Harris, maybe that dark horse candidate to be up there in the talks for being one of the best center fielders in the sport. And I love Ozzie Albies. Again, he brings consistency to the lineup. A switch hitting second baseman that hits 30 home runs. Not a lot of second basemen do that in this sport. After that, that's the bottom of the lineup. These are the guys that you're going to talk about and say, what can they do until Acuna gets back? What can they do until Sean Murphy gets back? I'm really expecting a lot out of Drake Baldwin. This is a guy that a lot of people don't know yet. Drake Baldwin is sitting at number 11 overall in the rankings for the prospects. This is a guy that is a top-tier catcher, one of the best prospects at the catcher position in the sport. He's going to come in, and he's going to hit. Watch him be an awesome hitter at the start of the year. That's what I'm really hoping for. Jared Kelenic, maybe he can bounce back. But my piece that I really like is Brian De La Cruz. This is a guy that before he ended up in Pittsburgh was having a great season last year, was on pace to hit 30 home runs, went to Pittsburgh, fell off a cliff. I'm hoping he can come in and be the right fielder, subbing in and out with Kelnick based on the side of the plate that they are facing. Again, this team to me has arguably one of the best defensive units on the field. They're going to produce really good defensive stats. You've got a great shortstop at defense in Orlando Arcia, Austin Riley at third, and of course, Matt Olson every year in and out is one of the best defenders at the first base position. I'm hoping we can continue the success that we've had in that area of defense because it's very important to your winning. Hoppy, if you want to talk about this starting rotation.
Yeah, I think Chris Sale is a really good pitcher. Y'all have a good starting rotation with the first three guys. I also like AJ Smith-Shawver to actually play pretty well this year. I think he will probably pitch out the whole year and end up still being a starter by the end, and that's always a good sign. Then y'all have Iglesias in the bullpen. He is one of the best closers in baseball, and this team should be ahead of a lot of games, so he should have a lot of opportunities. Chris Sale won the Cy Young last year. I don't expect him to come out and pitch quite that well again, but should still be a good pitcher for this team. And then I didn't even mention Sean Murphy when I was talking about the hitters. That dude is a great hitter for a catcher, and I don't know who that prospect you mentioned is either, but just hearing you talk about him and the team he's playing for, I reckon he'll probably be pretty good.
Yeah, I really hope so. Again, I'm expecting a lot out of Drake Baldwin. Had a really good spring training, was batting really well. So again, I just expect a lot out of him. Again, you look at this rotation. You're talking about a guy in Chris Sale who's coming off one of the best years he's had in 5 or 6 seasons. Did not face the injuries until right at the end of the season. Oh yeah, forget to mention we didn't have him for the playoffs either. We lost our whole entire team towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, that's what happens in baseball sometimes. Ronaldo Lopez, we shifted him into a starter. He was sick. And watch out for Spencer Schwellenbach. When we talk about our awards, when we release that video on opening day, his name might be getting dropped somewhere in there. I love AJ Smith-Shawver sitting at number 40 in the prospect rankings as our second best guy. And then Grant Holmes. This guy is awesome. If you want to talk about a guy that everybody in baseball needs to just watch, you'll love this guy. He's sick. Grant Holmes will come in and be consistent for us until we get back. Oh, yeah. Cy Young candidate Spencer Strider. When you add him back to this rotation, you're talking about one of the best rotations in the entire sport. I'm hoping that's what can carry us into a deep playoff run. I think Atlanta's starting pitching is obviously great. I think that that's something that helps them out. But if you look at this bullpen, I think there's some underrated arms in there. Late addition to this roster was Hector Neris. If you remember Hector Neris when he was with Houston, he was really, really good. It's a guy that some publications are saying he could push for the closer job from Rafael. Of course, if Rafael doesn't like that job or gets pushed out of that job. But again, I think he sticks there. He's been amazing, especially last year. And then I really love Dylan Lee, Aaron Bummer, Pierce Johnson. These are guys that have all succeeded with the Braves. And actually, the Braves are pretty good at turning relievers that have not been great at other places into pretty solid relievers once they arrive. And of course, recent addition Jesse Chavez returned to the roster for the 11th time in his career. So when he gets there, maybe they can get him back into this rotation. And then also another name I like to mention is Daysbel Hernandez. At times, Daysbel has come up and really he's a great strikeout pitcher. Does struggle with some walks. Spring training, kind of the same story. If he can figure out how to control his walk rate, another arm that could be great in this bullpen that really pumps some gas. And last but not least, Joe Jimenez. If Joe Jimenez can make it back from the knee surgery that he had in October late last year and return to this bullpen in about August, that is a phenomenal piece to have for the last month of the regular season going into the playoffs, seeing that he was the setup guy. He was the guy that pitched right before Rafael, got us to the ninth inning, was really good in that role. Really hoping he can come back. If he doesn't, it is a huge blow to the bullpen because he would just be amazing slotting in right in front of Rossell. But again, I love the bullpen. I love the rotation, and I do think we have one of the deepest lineups, especially when perennial MVP candidate Ronald Acuna Jr. returns. This guy, watch out for him. He's coming back in a better way than he did when he come back from his first knee tear. He is rehabbing it way better. They're taking it a lot slower, and they're going to let him come back on his time when he feels like he's good to go. He also said, I'm not going to steal as many bags this year. I'm just going to start swinging the bat, trying to hit balls to the moon. He said he's pushing for the homers this year so he can let his knee heal a little bit better and then push for the steals again the next season. So when we get Acuna back, again, I really love this lineup. I think it's tops in the MLB. We just talked about all the divisions. You saw who we think is going to win these divisions, and now we're going to talk about the playoff teams. Hoppy, give us why you think these teams will make the playoffs.
Well, the top three teams we've already talked a lot about, but I'll talk a little bit more about them here. The Dodgers just have a great pitching staff, and they're pretty much everybody's pick for the number one team in the entire league, coming off the World Series last year. The Atlanta Braves are my pick for the best top to bottom hitting lineup in the National League. The Rangers out in the American League might be a little bit better top to bottom, but the Cincinnati Reds, I got them winning the NL, the weakest division in the National League for sure as far as top end teams go, but I think they can squeak it out, and I think they can also be one of the better batting teams in this league. Uh, the Philadelphia Phillies are a great wild card spot. They always match up against the Braves in the playoffs, so I mean those are always really exciting games to watch. Those are always really close games, and they could come down to the wire. And then the Diamondbacks have a great young team. I think they're going to make the playoffs without a doubt and be could possibly win the division as well if they were playing in a different division. And then you look down here at the New York Mets. They have a great bullpen and really decent 1, 2, 3 hitters up at the top of their lineup.
Yeah, and moving on to my teams here, there's going to be a surprise. I know you're going to be happy about at the bottom of those wild card teams, but I'm going to start at the top, talking about the Dodgers. Again, this rotation is probably the greatest rotation we've ever seen, like you said. I mean, it's unbelievable when you have seven guys that literally have Hall of Fame cases. That's not a joke. That's how good this lineup is. Other than Roki Sasaki, of course, just starting his major league career, it's unbelievable. I mean, honestly, it's insane. And if they do get dethroned, it's just baseball. That's the thing. It's not that the roster's not the best. It is from top to bottom by far the best roster. That's how good it is. Now, when you talk about lineups, you're right. I think the Braves have the best lineup in baseball when fully healthy. Now, again, that's a big question mark. When will Acuna come back? When will he be fully healthy? Can the guys in the lineup stay healthy? Can Sean Murphy return and be fully healthy? That's question marks for sure. Those things can worry you at times. The Brewers, to me, again, the team that is just Mr. Consistency. When it comes to winning the Central, they're at the top of it or winning it every year. I think that they, again, will have the best pitching staff in the Central Division, and I just expect a lot from that team. When you look at the wild card teams, the Phillies, again, this is the best team not winning a division, in my personal opinion. I think they're really good. I think they will make a big time move. I'm just hoping the Braves can hold on to the top, and I'm hoping I'm not jinxing the Braves for winning the division. Then you move on to number two, the Arizona Diamondbacks. This team is filthy. And again, this 1 through 5 to me is pretty much locks. I think that these five teams are guaranteed in the playoffs. Now, speaking, of course, of whoever wins the division at the three, I don't know if that necessarily will be the Brewers, but 1 through 5 will be teams I think make the playoffs as the Phillies and the Diamondbacks are the guaranteed wild cards. And I think that that third spot to me was a complete toss up. I'm looking at the teams and I'm thinking to myself, who do I trust? And when it comes down to it, who could be the most high ceiling potential team? To me, the Mets pitching rotation is bad. It's just not good. And when your rotation isn't good, you don't win playoff baseball. You don't win in big time moments in big time situations. That team is really set up to succeed in the future because when they have the money to go out and add the starting pitching, the lineup is filthy. Now, again, the bottom half of the lineup is riddled with injuries right now. Those guys won't be back for quite some time. The rotation is not very good. To me, that scares me off the Mets. You look at this Reds team, the rotation is pretty good and it can get better. They're talking about guys like, again, Rhett Lauder. This guy is sick. I promise you, you're going to love watching him, Hoppy. Great pitcher. You bring back Abbott. Can he give you really good innings? I mean, he had an awesome start to his career with the Reds. I just like the Reds lineup better. I like the pitching staff better. The only thing that scares me is that Reds bullpen, and I'm just hoping that some of those guys are guys that we don't expect to be great, and they are great. I'm going with the Reds at the sixth spot into the playoffs, barely sneaking in. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us, talking about the National League here, talking about our first MLB content. And Hoppy, if there's anything else you want to say about the National League.
Yeah, the National League, man, it's looking like a good top end league. A lot of talent, best team in baseball, supposed to be the Dodgers again this year. Everyone's assuming it. I like the National League. I've always watched them more than the American League as a Reds fan, so should be exciting to watch them this year.
Yeah, and you talk about the National League. I expect it will be very, very good this year. I think that there's a reasonable case to say that behind who I have at the top in the Red Sox and the Rangers, the five best teams other than those teams could come from the National League. Again, you look at baseball's power rankings, and I'm not even kidding with you when I say right now, baseball power rankings have Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, Mets, 1 through 4 as the top four.
No doubt.
in baseball. And that's crazy that that's four teams from the National League, three from the East. Again, that terrifies me as a fan of the Braves who have to go through that gauntlet of a schedule. And of course, other than that, I just appreciate you guys so much for joining us. It is a ton of fun to talk the sports that we do. Now we're talking baseball. It's baseball time. And again, make sure you show up tomorrow and watch our awards video. On opening day, pay attention. The awards video will come out. Talk quickly about who we think is going to win MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year on both leagues.
Thank you all for joining us. And I just want to add in that video will also be down on my channel as well. So go ahead and check it out there and drop a like at both places. You ain't got to watch the video 2 times, but show us love 2 times if you want to. Thanks for watching. God bless and peace.
And again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and peace.